This is a demonstration of crisscross stitch. As you can see, it is, you can see the crisscross. This is one of the knit rows. This crisscross is the purl rows on the way back. It's a 2-row pattern, and you need an even number of stitches. What I have here are 20. I'm going to flip it over and show the reverse side. As you can see, it makes a very dense fabric. So this is the right side, and it's a knit. The first stitch, you knit. The next stitch, you slip as if to purl. Knit the next stitch. Pass the slip stitch over. Don't drop it off. Knit into the back of the passed slip stitch right away. Slip as if to purl. Knit one. Pass the slip stitch over. Knit into the back of the slipped stitch. Again, slip one, knit one, pass slip stitch over, knit into the back. The dense fabric that this produces would be good for something like a washcloth, for example. I thought it would make a pretty good necktie if you had the stamina for knitting it for that distance. Slip, knit, pass slip stitch over, knit into the back. Slip, knit, pass slip stitch over, knit into the back. Slip, knit, pass slip stitch over, knit into the back. You should end up with one knit stitch. Now for the purl side, this is easier. On the purl side, what you're doing is purl two together and purl into the first stitch for a second time. You start right off with purl two together. And the first stitch is a little fiddly, but you want to purl into the first stitch again and then take both stitches off. Purl two, purl into the first stitch again, take both stitches off. It's a stitch that looks very nice in variegated yarn. If you are feeling that the purl side is way too tight, I would suggest that you move up a couple of needle sizes. This produces such a dense fabric that working with a somewhat larger needle than you normally would for the yarn actually works well. In this case, I have a worsted weight yarn, but I'm using a size 10 needle instead of what I'd usually use, about an 8. So you come to the last two stitches, and it is again purl two together, purl one in front, whoops, purl the front one, take both stitches off. If you are ending up losing a stitch, what I would suggest is that what you might be doing is you might be forgetting to knit the first stitch. The other possibility is the rhythm's a little irregular for an experienced knitter in terms of knitting into the back of the slipped stitch, so that sometimes you may forget and you may just pass the slip stitch over, in which case you'll end up with one stitch less. So that is crisscross stitch.
Rolling.
This is an example of what crisscross stitch can look like knitted into a piece of fabric. Here I'm working with the variegated yarn, and at this point in the fabric I had 15 stitches, so I increased 25% and went to 20 stitches, which seems to be about what you need to get the width of stockinette. So as you see, working up the piece, you get a sense of what the crisscross stitch looks like knitted into fabric. Now I'll turn it over so you can see the reverse side, and again, the dense work. Crisscross stitch.